I'll try to only take 5-10 minutes of your time. So thanks for sticking around and thanks, Pip. This is yet another project with a terrible backronym. And the idea of it is to look into the new reversal agents for DOACs that are being used in the UK or areas of the UK at the moment. So just as a bit of the background, I don't need to tell you all that major bleeding is a risk of anticoagulation, and our current management, at least up until the autumn of 2020, was with supportive management, PCC, and for patients on dabigatran, idarosuzumab. Andexanet alfa, I'm going to go on to talk about on the next slide. So Andexanet alfa is a decoy factor 10A molecule with no enzymatic activity that essentially binds the drug and stops it having 10A, anti-10A activity. Its efficacy has been looked at in the Annexa-4 trial, which was a fairly large phase 2 trial. So this did not have a randomized comparator arm. All the patients received the drug. So these were patients who were taking a Pixban or rivaroxaban and were admitted with acute major bleeding within 18 hours of taking the drug. And their primary outcomes were looking at, firstly, laboratory measures of reduction in anti-factor 10A activity, which was 92%. And then they looked at this slightly odd outcome measure of excellent or good hemostatic efficacy at 12 hours. The definitions of that are buried in the appendices for a previous study, and I'm sure you can go and have a look at them. And that was 82%. So within 30 days, 14% of the patients died and 10% had thrombosis, which I think is a significant number of people and raises a lot of questions. So what don't we know about Andexanet alfa? Well, this has not yet been looked at, or at least we don't have data yet on in a randomized way. In the UK, I'll talk about this in a second, but it is approved in Scotland for use. And we want to look at how this is being used and whether it's being used differently to PCC. And then really, I'm interested in clinical outcomes. It'd be really nice to know whether Andexanet alfa is better than PCC. Is it better than nothing? Is it harmful? Is it cost effective? Next slide, please. So the UK is a remarkable country in many ways. The devolved healthcare decision-making makes a project like this really exciting. So in September, as I said earlier, the Scottish Medicines Consortium announced that Andexanet alfa would be approved for use in NHS Scotland for acute major bleeding on 10A inhibitors. But the approval process is still going on for England, Wales, and Northern Ireland, as we all heard about from Deepa earlier. So can you just go back a sec? Sorry, Emma. So we've basically now got a geographically disparate practice in the UK. I'm sure most of us would agree that Scottish patients and English patients are largely similar. Of course, there are going to be some small demographic differences, but largely we're talking about the same country, similar populations, and similar underlying diseases. So we've now got a really good opportunity to do what I would describe as close to a randomized controlled trial as it might be possible to do at the moment. Now, this in no way, shape, or form would be a randomized controlled trial. We're looking at doing a retrospective review of patients who have been treated for acute major bleeding in the UK. But the beauty of it is that we will look at a time window when Scotland was using Andexanet and the rest of the UK was using PCC. Okay, next slide, please. So our primary objective is to audit the use of reversal agents for anticoagulation in the UK against clinical guidelines. There's a NICE guidelines and BSH guidelines. And then the secondary objective, which I think is really exciting, is that this allows a study of comparative efficacy of Andexanet alfa, idarosuzumab, and PCC in a way that's essentially geographically stratified. Next slide, please. The timeline is fairly short, really. At the moment, we are just finalizing the data that we want to collect, building the online data entry portal, which will be REDCap, that I'm sure many of you used before, looking to sign up sites, particularly in Scotland. And I'm pleased to be working with the YES in Glasgow, and a few other people who have been very interested. And I think that's going to be the make or break of this project, is to get lots of patients from Scotland. And then we really just need to wait for the NICE decision on Andexanet in England. If it is approved, or it's approved for certain patients, at that point we would identify the window between the Scottish announcement date and the NICE announcement date, and look at those patients. The patient collection will be retrospective. I think they'll be very easy to identify by basically looking through blood bank or pharmacy records for patients who have received either PCC or Andexanet or idarosuzumab during that time, and then data entry will be onto the REDCap database directly. The plan is to have some data analysis sort of going forwards towards autumn, winter 2021, and perhaps submit for some abstracts in spring next year, which would be lovely. But there's a lot of work to do in the interim period. Next slide, please. So if you're really interested in this project, and I think it is something that is going to be incredibly powerful, it is the UK almost offers this sort of unique opportunity to do this kind of study, given our strange devolved healthcare. If you're interested, send me an email, richard.buka@nhs.net, or look me up on Twitter, whatever, and I'll be really interested in hearing from you, and any ideas or thoughts you might have. I've not gone into lots of detail about the data we want to collect in the interest of time, and it's not that interesting at the moment, but we've had lots of conversations between ourselves about trying to work out exactly what we want, and most of it has been Pip pulling me back and telling me I don't need to know what people's favorite color is, etc., etc. So with that, I don't think there's anything else I want to add, unless Pip wants to add anything. And I'm really looking forward to hearing from you and working with you in the coming year.